Victor Wembanyama just had the fastest 50-point game in NBA history. 50 points in 26 minutes, and he only shot 9 free throws.
By George. Now Wembanyama, guarded by Kispert. Turns, shoots, and swishes for 50!
And for this video, I was looking at recent 50-point performances just to compare them to Wemby's, compare how young they were, how long it took them, all this different stuff. And I was scrolling through and I'd forgotten. You look at the recent 50-point games, right? There's a bunch of names that make sense. We've got Brunson, Luka, Embiid, all these guys. There's one name here that doesn't belong. It's a guy that doesn't even have a picture on StatMuse here. Malachi Flynn dropped 50 last year, and I totally forgot. Also, the fact that the only two 50-point games we have so far this year are from Paolo and Victor Wembanyama, two guys that are extremely young, going to get a ton more 50-point games the rest of the way in their career. That's just really cool. This is one of the best early season performances in the league this year, and it's crazy because he hasn't even been scoring well to begin the season in the first place. But let's talk about the game first. Obviously, the first thing to point out here is the fact that he made 8 threes. At his size, that's like the ultra peak version of whatever we think Victor Wembanyama might be eventually offensively. It comes down to him making all of these jump shots. We've talked about in other videos this season about how teams are putting smaller guys on Victor Wembanyama, how they're not worried about him possibly punishing them in the post. They're guarding him with Dylan Brooks and Alex Caruso. And like I said, he hasn't been scoring that well to begin the season. But in this game, Washington, who has the worst defensive front court in the entire league, put Alex Sarr on him. They thought, okay, this is our versatile front court big. Let's have Alex Sarr try and guard Victor Wembanyama. And that did not work at all. He was able to shoot over the top of him. He was able to get by him to the rim. And at this point in Wemby's career, there's going to be up and down shooting performances. Obviously, in this game, it was very, very up, but we've had other games this year where he hasn't shot the ball well from three. The thing that I like to focus on with his game is how he's getting to the rim. Is he attacking in the paint? Is he getting some of those paint points? And in this game, it's like he all of a sudden realized that he's 7'6" or whatever and is one of the most unstoppable paint finishers in the entire league. He can get on the offensive glass, and anytime he's in a ball screen action, you always have the fail-safe of just lobbing it up to him. And it feels like all of a sudden he realized that in this game. I don't think that this is an unrealistic expectation for him. If he can make 3 to 4 threes a game, he can average 30 points a game pretty easily because he's so dominant in the paint if he wants to be there. Now, there were still plenty of these in-between mid-range jumpers, some of which went in, some of which didn't. And I've talked in previous videos about how that does still need to be part of his game. It's one of the reasons that Kristaps Porzingis has been so effective in Boston and in his last season at Washington, and why his post numbers improved so much. It wasn't that he was able to just dominate and back guys down and get to the rim and dunk on them, but he was such an efficient shooter from the mid-range over the top of guys that was how he attacked switches. That was how he attacked having smaller guys on him. And Wemby continuing to develop that is going to be really important. I'm not anti-Wemby shooting jump shots, but this game was the perfect example of how those two things can go together when you can make threes and you can still be a threat at the rim. And this is something that I've talked about in pretty much every Wemby video on this channel. When he came into the league, we overestimated his overall offensive skill. We saw a guy that was tall and can shoot a little bit, could dribble a little bit, and we saw someone that was going to be like Kevin Durant. I think Wemby kind of thinks he's Kevin Durant, and he's just not. That's just not a realistic expectation for him offensively, certainly not this early on in his career, but he's clearly continually developed and worked on some of these perimeter skills. He's a little stronger with the ball. His jump shot is a little bit better, and as that continues to improve, there's just going to be absolutely nothing you're going to be able to do with this guy unless he's missing jump shots. Like, I know we say this all the time. We used to say this about Giannis all the time. We used to say this about LeBron all the time, but like, if he gets a consistent jump shot and he is consistent from three, there's just not much you're going to be able to do if he's making those shots, and this game was the perfect example. And the crazy part about all this is even in a game where he has 50 points, he was still awesome defensively. He's still the best rim protector in the entire league. He can still guard on the perimeter and stick with guys. He's still an unbelievable player on the defensive end of the floor, and there's not that many guys that you can say that about around the league. Maybe one or two that you can say could go get 50 and still be extremely impactful defensively. I mean, it's like him and Giannis. And honestly, that's kind of the end of the list. Like, just the ceiling of what this guy could be long-term is unbelievable. And we already knew that, but to actually see the realized version of that on the floor, albeit against a bad Wizards team, was just unbelievable. And although it's going to be difficult for the Spurs to make any kind of real noise in the West this year, just because the conference is so stacked, they are 500. They're 6-6, although they picked up some easier wins. And you can kind of start to see what this team is going to be around Wemby long term. In the starting lineup, they've got obviously a creator with Chris Paul. He can work on that ball screen chemistry with. They've got spacers, Harrison Barnes, Champagnie. I really, really like Steph Castle. I like what he's shown as a rookie. I think him and Wemby together, that combination defensively is going to be unbelievable. I think worst case, he's got like this Marcus Smart kind of ceiling where he can really guard, and maybe he's never a 40% three-point shooter, but he can at least shoot well enough to be out there and be a productive player for you, and then potentially even be more than that down the road. I really like Steph Castle. And the piece that's kind of been forgotten about in San Antonio so far this year, just because he was hurt at the beginning of the year, is Devin Vassell. Devin Vassell is like a perfect fit alongside Wemby as a not just kind of smaller guard, point guard creator like Chris Paul is, but someone that can come off screens and actually look to score, look to be a shot creator off some of these dribble handoffs with Wemby, off some of these screens with Wemby, and that'll just open up so many more things for him, because when Chris Paul comes off a screen, like every team in the league knows that he's either trying to get to his little pet mid-range jump shot or he's trying to lob it up to Wemby. But if Devin Vassell comes off, there's just a bunch of other stuff that he can do. Right now, he's still on a minutes restriction as he's coming back from injury, but they've got a pretty interesting core there outside of Wemby. They're going to continue to add shooting, and they have all these picks and pieces moving forward as well to continue to add around the roster. They still need better three-point spacing. They still need better options potentially to play alongside Victor Wembanyama in the front court. As much as Jeremy Sohan is sometimes an interesting player, I'd like to see them explore potentially other pieces there as well, because the long term of this, where Wemby could maybe play the 4 sometimes alongside a really big 5, defensively the ceiling of that is just out of control. But ultimately, the takeaway for me is, like, let's not pretend like this is normal. Like, Victor Wembanyama is the best prospect in basketball. He's the best young player in basketball. And I don't want it to seem like just because we had all these high expectations for him as a rookie and he had a pretty good rookie year that it's just normal for him to show up and have 50. I feel like people aren't actually reacting to this the way that they should. I feel like they're acting like it's expected. Oh, he's 7'5", he's 7'6", it should be easy for him. No, nothing about this is easy. It's unbelievable that he's able to do what he is, the fluidity that he has offensively, how clean the jump shot looks at times. 50 points in 26 minutes is stupid. Like, that is a crazy amount of production in such a short time span. And that's the other thing that they can continually unlock down the road, potentially, depending on how they feel about it, is whatever point the Spurs are what they want to be with Victor Wembanyama a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. He's only playing like 32 minutes a game right now. Do they ever ramp that up? Do they ever go 37, 38 minutes? Because all the other best players in the league, Jokic, these guys, they play 37, 38 minutes a night. And that version of Wemby is still there. There's still 6 extra minutes that he's not on the floor, that he's not putting up even more points. He could have had 60, 70 last night, potentially, if you look at how much he was scoring per minute. And that, to me, is a piece that I can't wait to see them continue to unlock. Playing him a little bit more if they feel like it makes sense for him from a health standpoint, adding more spacing, adding more creation around him, because I think they're still leaning too much on him offensively to be the creator on the ball. A lot of his best looks last night came off of someone else creating, dishing for him being a spacer. If you're going to ask him to go and just have the ball in the mid post and attack 20 times a game, I don't think that's realistic for him at this point in his career. So to be able to take some of that offensive responsibility off him, I think that'll be helped with Devin Vassell coming back as well. And if you can continue to add creators like that in this upcoming draft, or maybe Steph Castle becomes one of those guys, the sky is truly the limit with this Spurs team and with this Spurs roster. And obviously, hopefully Popovich comes back and is healthy, or at least is okay from a health standpoint. They can continue to be on this upward swing that they're on.